Hello. Okay, so we will begin this session and welcome to everyone that is there. My name is Christina Laster. I am a homeschool mom. I have worked in education, early childhood education, special education, and now have decided to homeschool my children. And so I want to share some ways to homeschool since everyone's suddenly homeschooling, and just share some techniques and some skills that you can learn to thrive from home with your child. So we're going to start out with the slides that I have presented on home-based education skills. Okay, and I'm going to share my screen and you can all view that. During this process, I'm going to move from 1, 2, and 3, and you'll see that listed on the presentation on the slides. And what I will do is pause for questions during that time, so that if anyone has questions, we'll allow for unmute. You can raise your hand and we'll answer questions. Sharing my screen. So again, this is home-based education skills training, a guide to managing day by day. Your questions are also welcome. If you would like to text them to the number above, then we will also be addressing those questions as well. So we're going to start out with a discussion on how to structure your student's day. Because we are all doing this from home suddenly, some people are, well, I was already homeschooling, but a lot of us have found ourselves suddenly schooling from home. It is very important that you take this time to establish a set of norms around how distance learning and at home learning are going to look in your home. And so the way that I do that is by sitting down and setting expectations. Okay, but I have to start with the realistic view of what my expectations are for my child, and then also seeing what's reasonable for them. The way that I structure that is by preparing a calendar and what their day is going to look like each day. So we're talking about creating daily expectations, setting daily goals, right? Some people can refer to them as milestones. When you are the parent, you set those expectations according to your child's abilities. What I do is I know my child's strengths, and I also am aware of their weaknesses. So I develop a daily schedule of how I am going to teach them to develop in the area of their weaknesses and master their strengths, right? So right here we can see that daily goals will also allow you to measure progress by milestones. Parental expectations. So there are no aspirations, but a realistic and reasonable guidelines for day-to-day performance. What are you expecting from your child? Are you expecting that now that they're schooling from home, that they will sit at the table 6 hours a day? Well, that's not a reasonable expectation for a child. And so I'll talk to you guys about chunking time and setting standards, how to chunk time and set standards around that. What are the expectations, your child's expectations? Do they know when they wake up in the morning, do they know what they're supposed to do throughout the day, right? This will help them to be able to set a pace, and you to be able to set a pace in your home for how they're going to learn from home. Typically we view areas in the home for specific things. If you walk into a bedroom, you expect your bed to be there. You expect that that's a place that you're going to do certain things. You go in the kitchen, you have an expectation that when I go in the kitchen, this is where I'm going to cook, eat, or get food from, right? If you go to the bathroom, right? And so where is the area of learning for your child? Is that going to be in the kitchen? Is that going to be on the couch? And what is that going to look like if your child sits on the couch to do work? What is the expectation going to look like? And having those core expectations as a family is also a vital way that you can do. And I use the term, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So at my house, we have charted family values. What are our family values? Okay, well, we appreciate learning and we'll respect each other's space. We value communication. So we're always going to respect communication with each other. And what does that look like? And so I put that on a piece of paper, and my kids are able to come up with a compact or contract of what our family values and our systems and our norms are going to look like learning from home. So right here, I have 10 vital principles to establish around online learning. How will my child learn now? Right? And in the corner, you'll see the tip: planning ahead and sharing the plan with your child will help to reduce stress, panic, and worry, typically reducing overall triggers to unwanted behavior. So what that looks like is, if you have been given distance learning content from your school, from your teacher, I would say that it would be wise to go in and view the materials before you give them to your child. And you can set reasonable expectations around what their day is going to look like for that. So, for instance, every day I move through different content. For my 8-year-old child, that looks different than what that looks like for my 13-year-old child. So I look at and review those materials and what content area they're going to be in prior to having them sit down and do and cover the materials. And I structure time around that. So when the children wake up, they know that our daily routine is they're going to read the Bible, which that's a practice in my home. You have your own practices in your home, and that's fine. And that's after they do all of their normal things like brush their teeth, wash their face, get ready to eat, and all of those things. So then learning happens after that. And they read the Bible. And then what I do to develop some skill is offer them a word search so that they will get excited about, now it's time for learning in the home. They read the Bible, do a little word search, and then they have their materials ready. There are specific days that I cover science, and other days it's going to be English language arts proficiency. We do that during that day. So it's looks like the Bible, word search, and then the content. I chunk time. Chunking time is very important. If you notice, kids are really excited about things like TikTok, right? And they have these short video excerpts that keep their attention for quick amounts of time, and then they move on to the next thing. Well, I use chunking time to get them excited about moving on to their next assignments. So my son will spend, and this is something that you can do, will spend 15 minutes focused and targeted 15 minutes on an English language arts activity, such as sight words, okay, vocabulary building strategies that we use in our home. He reads these paragraphs and then has to develop around the content that he read in the paragraphs based on the workbooks that we have. Math, what does math look like? Well, my daughter's 13. So she will do 35 minutes of a structured math activity that I've already previewed ahead of time, and then take a break. After his 15 minutes, take a break, get a preferred activity for about 10 minutes, go back to an assignment. And so that's how you can chunk time and keep their attention and focus. When you establish your schedule, you are going to start out with those reasonable expectations, for you and your child. And then I'm going to start talking about each one. So 1, teach your child that failure is a stepping stone. That way, when they approach materials, and I'm looking over because I have notes that I'm reading off of, because I always have to have notes to keep me focused. You should do the same thing. There's a lot of information that comes at us, and being able to remember that information is vital. So you don't walk away and say, wow, I can't quite remember what was said at that point. Teaching your child that failure is a stepping stone. What does that look like in your home, right? How can you teach your child that even if they didn't do something completely the way that they thought it was going to turn out, or that you thought it was going to turn out, that they're not a failure, but that they can use that opportunity to master and perfect in that area. So I talk about mastery. I talk about that a lot, because what I know is that if a child is weak in an area and you develop them around that area, they will be able to master it. What I do is teach content and then have my children teach the content back to me. When a child is able to teach content back, that means that they know it, that they know it. So what are you teaching your child to teach back to you? There may be some areas that you don't understand in their learning process if they've been given materials, and that is a really good way that you can have your child then explain this to me. What is this? And they will be able to teach that content, and you guys can both learn in that section. So 2, make learning an activity that your child loves. If learning is a chore to your child, then that'll become a mental block, and they will not really approach their work with the desire to learn from it. They will approach it as a chore. Let me just get this done and over with. And I really don't think they're going to be excited to do that subject area every day if they approach it and it's a chore to them. So you need to make learning an activity that they love. How do I do that? Well, when we're talking about science, I always finish that science content up with teach that back through a project. Through a project. Let's create a project that we can do at home. Let's do some discovery, some investigation around the subject area, whether that's talking about ecosystems, planting, you name it. Let's develop some activities that we can do in the home to develop you around that subject area. It becomes fun and not a chore. I have a book that we use. It's called The Science Chef. And it teaches science in a way that even integrates math. That is something that you can do in your home through, it's a cooking actually book. You can do that in your home to make science and math an activity that your child will love. Allow your child to follow their passion. What is your child's specific area of interest? So we talk about allowing them to master in the areas that they're already interested in, allowing them to build their mastery based on that. So you know your child best. What is their area of specific interest that you can help them to thrive and master? Allow them to develop around that interest. Allow them to do projects, allow them to do research, allow them to build skill in that area. There's nothing wrong with knowing their specific interests and allowing them to build mastery around that. Okay. 4, you are going to make academic subjects feel relevant to your child. So what I do to make academic subjects relevant to my kids' day-to-day life is by using real life applications. And whatever that may look like is going to be according to your child's age, according to what you guys have access to right now. But there's a way that you could do that innovatively, and you can make that relevant by asking, what did you learn from this? Okay, what can we take into our daily lives from what you just learned, whether that's a passage that they read, whether that is a math problem, even like what can we apply to our daily lives to make this stick and to make it applicable so that I can make sure that you actually understand what you're doing and what you learned. And I want you to know that these things are a process. They don't just happen in one day. So when you're establishing new norms around expectations, around content building, around skill building, around developing weak areas, and around mastering the strengths, you really have to be patient with yourself and understand that this is a process. This happens over a process of time. It doesn't just happen in one day. So you for younger children, especially older children too, you would like to involve games in learning as much as possible. I'm able to do a family game that builds skill in English language arts through Mad Libs. Okay, so a lot of us knew about Mad Libs and probably have even played Mad Libs, but I don't know if you really even know how good this is for building English language arts skill. So let's look at that. Mad Libs is a game you can play. Of course, you come up with all these silly words and then you read what happens with the paragraph in the end. But you can teach your child adjectives, adverbs, nouns, verbs, exclamations, places that they might not have thought about that they can integrate into their learning, into this game. They learn plurals. They learn all types of things that you may not even thought of that will be at the forefront of their memory when they're approaching their English language arts activities, planned academic activities through the use of the game Mad Libs. So I suggest that if you can look them up online and maybe get a couple ideas or suggestions. We have the book. And I don't know, that might be something that you want to integrate into your family as a game. Albert Einstein says that play is the highest form of research. So involve those games as much as possible. Number 6, talking about motivating our children to want to learn, to not approach learning as a chore, motivating through consequences rather than punishment is always a good thing. Outcomes are what you're looking at. What is going to be the outcome? So if it's a punishment that's going to be the outcome, they're not going to want to approach learning in the way that you want them to. But if you show children that actions are very essential part of their day, right? What is going to be determined by your action? What does cause and effect look like? Some of our children learn from natural consequences. Well, I asked you to do a certain amount of things and you didn't do them, so here's the outcome of that. Some of them learn by natural consequences, such as when you see children that are young and you tell them, hey, don't jump off of the chair because you're going to get hurt. And they continue to do that until a natural consequence happens. They fall and they actually get hurt. And then they automatically now learn that this determined that, so I don't want to do that again. So we're teaching cause and effect. But the consequences, not punishment. A lot of times, threatening really puts a block on what the kids want to hear from us. And so having a consequence is different from having a punishment. Improve your child's depth of processing. So processing, when I was talking about sight words are something that children have to memorize because they do not automatically play fair as far as phonics are concerned. So with sight words, children have to have all of these words in their database, in their memory by a certain age. Do you know if your child has mastered those sight words? Well, they are by grade, level by level. And once they master those, they will automatically be able to recognize them. And that's why I don't mind using crossword crossword puzzles and things like that, so that that can help build them in that skill of memorization. Puzzles, games that build in memorization. You The way that you want their minds to process is by, reorganizing information to ensure that the information is actually lodged into their memory. Sometimes that takes place over a period of times, repetition. We play Mad Libs over and over again until they get that skill. We do crossword puzzles over and over again because they're building the memory. Sight words are something that they can study each day, chunks at a time, until they memorize them. You can build flashcards. You can do other things like that to make sure that those things are lodged into their memory. There is a game that your children can play, and you would want to go and search this and look at what they're providing previously to giving it to your child. That is called Memrise, Memrise. So you would want to go and look at that prior to offering it to your child and make sure that it's something that you would like to offer to your child. Okay, so we're at number 8. Equip your child with switching off and relaxation techniques. The way that I do that is I provide my children with grounding exercises where we do transitions through music. Okay. Right now, we're going to transition from learning into quiet time or reading a book time or relaxation, breathing, meditation, whatever that looks like in your home. And I do use music as an indicator to transition them during that time. So when it's almost time to start moving into our relaxation time, I start to play music, and my kids understand that we are going to be stopping this activity soon, and it's probably time for lunch, right? There's different types of music that I do to integrate that. When it's time for my kids to do something that may be a little bit more skilled or tasked, I start to play classical music, and they understand that that's a transition in my brain. I have to transition. I'm going to be doing an activity that, is going to require me to do XYZ. And so what does that look like in your home? And that's something that is simple. You can integrate music into your day to use for transitions, also to indicate that it's time to switch off and relax. That also, when you do that, that aids in their focus and concentration. Allow your child safe access to the internet. So right now, distance learning requires a lot of internet time that maybe children were not getting before. And now you're offering them this huge window of access to the internet. However, that needs to be safe. That needs to be planned. That needs to be safe, because there's so much content out there that you may miss an area of intrusion in your home. You may miss something that is inappropriate for their home, for the home. And so what I do, and there's ads that pop up, there's all kinds of things that pop up that can just intrude into your child's mind that you do not want them involved in, or clicking or different things like that. And you can easily create a safe access to the internet by previewing sites before they use them, by monitoring and allowing for chunks of time on the internet, not a huge portion of time, by supervising and monitoring exactly what they're clicking on, asking questions like, what is it that you're working on right now? What site are you on? Let me see it, right? So that's safe access to internet. Allow your child space to learn empathy, right? So this is a great opportunity for us to teach some life skill and academics at the same time. Your day might have been structured differently, and I'm looking at my notes, sorry. Your day might have been structured a little bit differently when everyone was in the hustle and bustle of things, going from coming and going here to there. But now there's a time period that you can integrate some value system and some life skills into your child's day. Empathy is one of those things that I think will help them to thrive and see the world around them a lot differently, because we want our kids to be globally competent as well, not just looking at what's in front of them, but knowing that there's a whole world out there. And what is that? Where do I fit into this whole world and scheme of things? And that can be done, and give them a love for learning. So we're talking about helping them to thrive. Okay. So I have this screen up and it says celebrating small victories. Milestone celebration produces greater future progress. The way that you want to measure progress is by quality, not always quantity. Because even some of us that have been, to college, we understand that lots of information is given. We can read a book, we can read 5 books for one course, walk away, and guess what? You don't even remember the content sometimes, right? And so what is quality? Quality is having a real well-rounded child that understands the content. You can make sure that they understand the content by teaching it back, by allowing them to master skills that they already have, gifts, talents, skills, and abilities that they already have. Allow them to master that. I put in the tip, your child is not a factory. Don't use a mass production model with an expectation of producing knowledge. It's just not going to happen that way. So you want to celebrate even the smallest victories. There's kindergartners that, couldn't write on a straight line. Their letters were crooked, their numbers were backwards, and so now what does that milestone look like? Well, that milestone can look like the fact that they can write neatly, even their name, one sentence on a line, and you should celebrate that. That will produce the confidence and the desire of the love for learning in your child, that they will want to continue to thrive. So don't underestimate celebrating small victories. Are you helping your child to be globally competitive? I talk about that through empathy even and different exercises, but language, art, and music can really integrate another skill set into your child's day. Other forms of expression, and looking at how people use forms of expression. Some people don't even realize that architecture has been a form of cultural expression in a lot of places. And so when I'm teaching my children art, I talk to them about architecture, buildings, and paintings, different forms of written expressions, poems, pictures. What do you see? What was the person trying to tell you through this creation? And where did they live? What is a part of their culture that they put into the language, the art, or the music? And so that can help broaden their understanding about how local and global communities operate, and that will give them an insight into the local and global communities. So again, I have the tip there that I've already said a few times. So allow your child to master a gift, skill, talent, or area of interest. Having them teach you content will ensure that they've mastered any area of learning. So before we move on to the next area, this questions. Does you have any questions? Okay.
If nobody else has a question, I'm just curious, how do you balance how much time you focus on a student's strengths and how much time you focus on a student's weaknesses?
Okay, so that's a good question. So what I do is I focus on the strength and the weaknesses at the same time. So there isn't really a amount of time, right? What I do is I approach their strengths first. Say you're so good at XYZ. Let's work on this area where you're weak at. Subject, because my kids are strong in certain areas, even within a subject, and then we other areas. For instance, if your child is good at reading, but not really good at like punctuation, grammar, different things like that, they read very well, right? That is something that I hone in on. Like, you read this very well, but we're going to work on this area of grammar, punctuation, and the like. So that's the way that you can do that in your home, is by showing them the areas that they're strong in and then integrating the areas that they're weak in after they feel confident in what they're doing. I have a note here, and it says very difficult to hear the audio. Perhaps people should mute their microphones if they are working. Is the microphone on or muted? I don't know. Is it my audio that's hard to hear? I'm sorry. Hello? Can everyone hear me? Okay, there's no in there and see it as a round. This is another area where I also relate or confident. I don't know. So let's talk about, and I wanted to do this by building in understanding about cognitive distortions that may trigger unwelcome moods and behavior, right? Cognitive distortions, defining common cognitive distortions and balancing your thoughts that will also help your child's thoughts to be balanced as well. We're going to talk about mood regulation and how to recognize triggers and change behavior. So there's a tip in the left-hand corner, and as you can see, it says, what your brain thinks, your body will follow. Your brain has that thought first before you move into action, right? Ensuring emotional well-being is a must. So we're going to talk about 6 common, and there are actually more than 6, but I'm going to just touch on 6 common cognitive distortions that can really interrupt your thoughts during the day. Some people call them stinking thinking. How can we remove stinking thinking and help our child to add confidence and balance to their lives? And our children are a reflection of us. They feed off of everything that we do, whether it's actions, whether it's emotions, whatever is going on. And so people might not understand how much a child mimics the behavior of adults happening in the home. I actually had to process and look through that even with my own daughter. A lot of people were saying, wow, your daughter talks just like you. And so I had to step back a moment and think of the ways that she was talking like me. And sure enough, the word usage that she used in her speech pathology and everything else, I saw that, yes, she had picked that up from the way that I communicated with her. And so it's very vital that we have an emotional well-being and come from a place of emotional wellness. So I want to talk about cognitive distortions, thinking, right? The first one I'm going to touch on is polarized thinking, all or nothing. Okay, you think in extremes, right? How many times does that intrude your thought process during the day? Those extremes, like it's either black or white, all or nothing, this or that. And so this type of thinking, it makes you feel like you're either destined for success or you're going to be doomed to fail. And you really want to try to attack and capture those thoughts. And at the point where you're having that thought, because there's never like nevers and always, those are language uses that I try to eliminate in my home. When my children say, there's always XYZ, or never does this XYZ, I say, really? You have your whole life ahead of you. Is there always or never, or is there the truth is somewhere in between those lines, right? So helping to bring a realistic balance, and that the reality exists between the lines of the two extremes is something that you want to practice. And like I said, this does not happen overnight. This takes a process of capturing your thoughts and being able to say, well, is this realistic? Is this reasonable, right? And then your kids will be able to pick up on your confidence level and be able to thrive based on that too. And you can help them also, if they have any polarized thinking, to be able to capture the thoughts and go in between lines instead of the two extremes. Overgeneralization. Overgeneralization is when you reach a conclusion about an event, then incorrectly apply that conclusion to others, right? You fail at something and you become hopeless because you failed at one thing. Well, just because you failed at that one thing, you cannot broadly apply that failure to everything else in general. And when you have that thought process, it makes you really apprehensive to approach new things, to approach challenges. Just because you failed at one thing, we're going to use that failure as a springboard to success. You can try again, right? Don't become hopeless. If you have a negative relationship experience, you begin to believe that you're not good in any relationship. And so you approach relationships and you approach communication with other people from this thought process of overgeneralization, that I failed at this and now I'm going to fail at this before, so why try? So you definitely want to start thinking more of how those thoughts are intruding your day, and how you can start to capture some of those things and bring a balance by bringing in a proper thought process. Overgeneralization thinking is often linked to people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder and other anxiety disorders. And so really capturing those thoughts can help you mood regulate. Catastrophizing. Catastrophizing leads you to dread or assume the worst when faced with the unknown. Right now, our day is actually literally step by step, day by day, something new can come out in the news. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so focusing on the moment helps you not catastrophize. I'll tell you an example about catastrophizing and how that impacted my life and how I was able to develop through that. So when my son was 22 months old, he was bitten by a baby rattlesnake, okay? And at that moment, because I had never known anybody who even was bit by a baby rattlesnake, I'd never seen one outside of pictures, outside of, movies, outside of even the zoo, just different thoughts and signs that say, warning, rattlesnakes are nearby. Immediately, my mind took me to a place of ultimate dread. He's gonna die. That was my first thought. All of a sudden, these scenes played back in my life from movies, from those warning signs, from those pictures, from hearing on the news horrible things about rattlesnakes. And my mind immediately took me to the place he is going to die, to the point where I started hyperventilating. The room was spinning. Thank God my mom was there because she was able to bring me back into reality and into balance. And we called 911. And 911 said, you have to calm down, and told my mom, you have to make sure that your daughter is calm because he's watching her. And if he starts to panic, that venom is going to pump through his system faster. And we need to get him to medical treatment. And so we want to slow the process by slowing down what he sees and reacting off of her emotions. So at that point, I had to be focused on what is happening right now. Okay, right now we're talking to 911. Okay, I couldn't think of what happened in the past. I couldn't think of what was going to happen in the future. I just had to be intentional and process through moment by moment. Okay, the ambulance came. Now, check, we're in the ambulance. He's at the hospital. Check, we're talking to the doctor. And so that's how I was able to bring my mood back into a regulated state to where I could help him to live, survive, and thrive, and me not have these awful thoughts that he was going to die. The catastrophizing can really take an ordinary worry or situation, and that can quickly escalate in your mind. An example on a smaller scale, but not so small, I don't want to, not be empathetic about people's situations, is that, waiting for a direct deposit, right? Waiting for a check in the mail. Now, say for instance, that comes late, or, you're used to getting your direct deposit at midnight, it hasn't posted, right? You can't automatically escalate the worry or situation and say, okay, I didn't get paid. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to be homeless. We're going to be hungry. You don't want to let your mind go there. You want to capture the thought and use reason and reality to help you not become dysregulated in your mood, because you'll have a range of emotions worrying about extremes that haven't even taken place yet, allowing that to escalate. And, I don't want to dismiss catastrophization as like a drama or hysterical overreaction, because a lot of people that actually in catastrophic ways have experienced repeated negative or adverse events in their lives that led to this thinking. And so we can be very intentional if we, had experienced some childhood trauma or even chronic pain sufferers, have this kind of thinking. We can be very intentional in breaking that thought process that breaks that cycle and pattern of thoughts every day in our lives. Instead of fearing the worst in situations, let's capture those thoughts, use reasonable thoughts, realistic thoughts, and see how that improves over time. It's not going to happen in one day, but it's something that we can definitely and intentionally work on day after day. Personalization. Do you take everything personally? One of the most common errors in thinking is to take everything personally when these events that take place around you may not even be connected to you, may not have even been caused by you, right? When you start to personalize, you start to blame yourself. You start to value your worth with this measurement, and it's really not accurate, right? So if you blame yourself for situations or circumstances that are beyond your control, your fault, don't assume that you've been intentionally excluded or targeted. What you can do instead of personalizing is ask, if you feel that you have been excluded from something or you feel that you have been targeted, one easy way to find out is by asking. Don't start taking the blame and adding your value or worth system in the thoughts that you believe about yourself into personalization. You don't want to do that. Personalization is linked to a heightened anxiety and depression. So you want to be able to check that. And if anyone is suffering from anxiety and depression and feel that they are beyond the point of being able to regulate their own mood, definitely reach out to your medical professionals and get help with that. There's a lot of, just things that have taken place and can hit us like a ton of bricks. So don't assume that you will just be able to just get over a depression. Like if you are suffering from depression, or if you feel that you are, please reach out to your healthcare provider. There's some national hotline numbers that you can also call. I do not have them as a resource, but you might be able to Google those. And I think that you should utilize those services during this time. Mind reading. So, mind reading is assuming that you know what others think. Okay, so we talked about personalization. That's assigning blame or fault to something that's not even connected to you. But mind reading is when you approach people or you approach life assuming that you know what others think. This is not the same as empathy. Empathy is the ability to perceive and understand what others are feeling. Before you venture out into this process of mind reading or assuming what other people think, you need to be weighing all of the evidence. Consider all the evidence, not that which just confirms your suspicions or beliefs. And the way that I have been able to successfully combat assuming what other people are thinking is by having an accountability partner. Do you want your accountability partner to be someone that's going to confirm your beliefs or your suspicions of why you're mind reading? Absolutely not. You want an accountability partner that is going to be able to tell you that either you're personalizing or you're mind reading. You can't tell what other people are thinking, and you can't assume. So why don't you ask, or why don't you reasonably look at the situation for what it is, that it's not connected to you. It's not your fault. It doesn't have anything to do with you. And so that is something that I practice and put into practice every day. And the more that you put these healthy thought patterns and insert them and get rid of the thinking, the better you will become. It's not going to happen overnight. Mind reading is common among children. And so a lot of times as a child, when you are internalizing a lot of information, internalizing a lot of things, and not really able to externalize things, sometimes children will pick up mind reading or assuming they know what other people are thinking. And you can see this evident in the fact that, a child can ask a question, and then before you even answer the question, they'll say, I already know what you're going to say. Really? Do you know what I'm going to say? Because I didn't even get the chance or opportunity to answer your question. So if we picked up these patterns in our childhood, they can follow us into adulthood. And so we need to be intentional about battling cognitive distortions in order to be able to effectively mood regulate, to regulate our emotions, right? The sixth one that I'm going to talk about is something that commonly, we do. Our kids can pick up on it, and that is should. Using shoulds and musts and oughts to. They can have a way of making you feel guilty, like you've already failed, right? I was taking a nutrition class, and the first thing that the nutritionist said was, don't should on yourself. And I said, well, what does that mean? Don't should on yourself. And she says, when you mess up, even with your eating habit, your healthy eating attempts, just keep going. Don't think like all of the things that you should have did that day, all of the things that you could have did, all the things that you ought to do, because you will not continue in a pattern that will make you successful. You'll stay stuck in that, and you'll just give up. And so don't should on yourself. How about that? If we apply shoulds to other people, the result is often frustration. So thinking that of what another person ought to do, must do, or should do, and not looking at that reasonably, not looking at that realistically, it can lead to frustration. You don't control the other person, so you really shouldn't even have that in your mind. So what you can do is just intentionally stop these thoughts and say what's reasonable throughout your day. And this is a practice. This is something that we have to be intentional about capturing our thoughts, in order to balance our mood. If I'm always angry or irritated, people are going to see that my children will see that instead of the message that I am trying to get across. So I want people to hear the message and not just block and say, whoa, she's always mad, or she's always irritated, or, the expectation is that she's going to X, Y, Z. No, I want the message to come through and not the emotion. And so I've been talking about how to reset your mind and how to be intentional, and how to allow your children to thrive, and actually helping them to capture their thoughts or stinking thinking, and inserting some other thoughts that are actually reasonable and realistic in those spaces, and being intentional about practicing that every day. Think before you act. A lot of times I will use a stop and think method with my children, and I just tell them stop and think, and I point to I do the stop and think, and so that allows them to automatically know with cues, even if I don't say it, because I've already taught and developed them around this area, that you need to stop and think, right? When you have control over your thoughts, you can better control your actions. Controlling thoughts and actions help you better pursue goals and get good outcomes. And so I have here in the tip area, remember that children are a reflection of parents. What a child sees, they will mimic and make their own reality. Experiences in the home will, with family, shape how they interpret and react as they navigate through life. So you are your child's primary teacher. You are your child's first teacher. And what they pick up from you, they will then navigate through their lives with those skills. And so if teaching yourself how to mood regulate and not adopt cognitive distortions, to reject those, capture your thoughts, and be balanced, will also teach your children how to thrive in that area. That is where we can talk about celebrating big victories. So celebrating big victories can be adding all of those milestones, that goal setting. Say, for instance, you guys set a weekly goal or a daily goal. Those are the small victories. And then the weekly goal, you can then on Friday or Saturday celebrate that as a big victory, right? What did your child break through in learning, in their learning process? Did they learn something that they thought would be very hard for them to grasp? That's a huge victory. You guys can put a planned time, and we're going to celebrate that. You can make this a tradition in your family that is unique and also innovative, right? Adding your family's way of being, value system, into how you celebrate. Some people celebrate through meals that they prepare in advance. Say, for instance, my child wants a favorite meal. Okay, we're going to celebrate through a meal. Some people celebrate through, we're going to have movie night. We're going to do whatever that may look like in your environment right now. I know that we're limited in our access to go out and do some things, but you can still celebrate big and small victories at home, and that will help your child thrive and become more confident, because this is a huge win for you and your child. It allows for bonding time, creative and innovative bonding time. It allows your child's esteem and confidence to raise, and they will want to approach their learning with a desire, and not as a chore. So celebrating milestones improves the way your child faces new challenges. When they understand how they've mastered one thing, they will be confident in trying to master another. And so, my son, one of his areas of weaknesses are math in his mind. And so every day we intentionally do drills that he prefers. He likes math drills, multiplication drills, and everything like that. And so I allow him to look at that drill math. It's like a song, or there's a 1-minute drill, and there's a rocket ship, and let's see how fast you can make it to the moon, kind of thing that we play. And once he sees that he mastered that, he approaches his math actual assignment in confidence, and he's no longer looking at that as something that he despises or hates. He's looking at that as, oh, I can do this because I did it yesterday and I was successful. and I've been successful over a period of time. So we want to be really intentional about celebrating milestones and celebrating huge victories. Okay, so I'm going to pause here, and I hope that I'm able to see if we can answer some questions. Okay, and so does anyone have any questions about distortions, and how you can effectively and intentionally capture those thoughts, to help your ecosystem become better? Oh, audio has gone back to horrible. You know, what I'll do is sorry, using my son's computer right here. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is just allow for you guys to text those questions at the number below. So it says question with a question mark. Please text those questions below, and then I will be more than willing to answer those questions anytime. I don't have a problem with answering those questions. I do not know what's going on with the computer, but we're going to make it through this. Resources. Look for quality over quantity. There is a lot of things that are being thrown out, and you really don't want to just pick one of those things. So you really need to navigate through these things before you offer them to your child, right? Look over the quality versus the quantity. You can have 10 different math links, and really you only need one that's of quality, right? You don't need 10, you need one. And so I have given some resources as links for those of you who have not connected with your teacher and don't have your distance learning program set up. There's some links that I've given and some resources that are at the end of this whole slide. But I want you to make sure that you preview content before you present it to your child. Okay, compare, make sure any resource that you use is the right fit for your child's modality of learning. Some children can do written work better than online work. They start getting online and they think, this is supposed to be about fun and games, and it's not capturing their attention. And so your child best. You know what resource is going to work, whether that's iReady, which you can print out worksheets, age appropriate, grade appropriate worksheets, and have them do them and pencil them in. Everything does not have to be online. You know your child best, so make sure any resource or tool that you use is going to be the right fit for your child's modality of learning. In my home, I actually like to decrease internet access and prefer that they use actually books, printed materials. And so that looks the way that looks because I set it up that way. Whatever books or printed materials that your child has, you can preview those things. You can sit down, like I said earlier, set those expectations, set it over quality and not quantity. Are you going to push them to get through 5 pages of math, or are you going to make sure that they mastered the 1 page? You be the judge of that in your home, but I prefer quality over quantity. It actually helps to produce the knowledge that you're looking for and not just throw a whole bunch of subject matter that they don't even understand the content area on to them. So I allow my children to get it in their subject, master that, then we move on. Master that, then we move on. Allow them to teach that content back to me. I want to know how they acquired information that was taught to them. I want to make sure that they're able to teach content back. The way that I do that is by having a 1 day a week family presentations time where they can take some of the things that they learned and write a report about them. And so we do a Q&A. I ask questions back. I use a Socratic method of asking them questions to bring out more information and more knowledge so that they can understand that they even mastered that skill area, and want to know more about it, whether it's science, whether it's math, whether it's language arts, art, music, all types of things. We're able to do that effectively. History, building in cultural awareness around history and global competence. That's something that they can report out on. And, you know, I call our report the Laster report. My tribe has a Laster reporting day, so we do that way. And I can make sure that they've actually mastered content areas, right? You know, with regards to consequences and trial and error, right? You want to really look at some triggers. If your child is becoming triggered, that's going to lead to a behavior, okay? So recognizing those things that are maybe more complicated and finding another way to work them into your child's day instead of just handing it to them and saying you do it, because they're going to block that. They're not going to want to learn. They're not going to approach that area or that subject with a desire to know more or with a desire to learn more about that. And we do not want to do that. They have their whole lives ahead of them, and we don't want them to approach from that place of dislike and disgust. We want them to be willing to take on challenges. We want them to be willing to approach new challenges, even the things that they, you know, might not feel confident in, but say, you know what, I'm going to try to do based on everything that I know. I'm going to try to do this anyway. Trial and error learning is different from complete, utter failure. You can reach a desired outcome after multiple attempts. So don't throw in the towel too soon. Okay, a lot of most successful people have multiple attempts through trial and error prior to reaching the pinnacle of their success. So the height of their success, they had to attempt it multiple times, and that trial and error allows for mastery because you learn from your mistakes, you move on, and then you can master something, and really this becomes successful at that. So don't throw in the towel, and, you know, let your kids know through those victory celebrations, through those attempts at challenges, that they don't have to give up, that they can continue to try, and that they will ultimately reach a pinnacle of their success. All right, and so we have been talking about increasing the learning curve as the government works to flatten the COVID curve. So again, I'm going to reiterate that home is the primary place of learning. Your child will learn from home what they apply to the rest of their lives. So we need to be very aware of what they are learning, and developing them in the areas that they're weak in, while celebrating their ability to master their strengths. A well-rounded child can do both. Education is the way which children acquire certain knowledge. Adding wisdom helps them to be well-rounded. I do this by allowing my children to approach the day before they do anything else, and read the Bible. And that's something that we practice in my home. Whatever that looks like in your home, you want your child to be well-rounded. You want them to be able to apply their knowledge and wisdom in ways that they apply it to life, understanding the world around them, and that helps them to thrive. Parents are the best teacher a child could have. Use this time while there's closures and school closures as an opportunity to help your child thrive. And so really, you know, children are naturally built to learn from us as parents best. And you can really see some progress and rates of progress at a rate that you might not see them when a child is learning from someone else. And, you know, so really celebrate that. and use that as an opportunity to be able to instill in your child the things that, you guys didn't, have time for before, or even if you see that they're at a deficit, you can really use this as a time to help them master and bridge that gap and bridge that deficit. And so you want to just be mindful that I always say the school is a building, okay? A lot of people, have to come from this perspective. The school is a building. It's the people that enter into that building that actually made it the educational environment. Now your educational environment is at home, and you can take this as an opportunity to utilize that to help your child acquire knowledge and wisdom and be well-rounded, because we want to make sure all of your children are thriving. And so that is the end of my presentation. I was going to open it up for Q&A, but I don't know how that's going to happen with my quality of sound. I don't know what's going on there, maybe just fluctuating between. What I'll try to do is take the presentation, close that box, and leave just Zoom up and see if I stop screen sharing, will that work so that we can do education. So blessings, good health and safety. We hope you'll use this information to be the best educator your child will have, and just know that together we can. We're going to make sure every child thrives, one family at a time, one child at a time, one community at a time. Thank you for coming. There are helpful sites. Fortune Distance Learning is one of the programs that is being offered free to the public right now. If you don't have your social distancing online learning protocol set up, you can go. They have virtual teacher hours. They offer a day of already collated curriculum for your child, whatever grade level they're at. It's all comprehensive. You don't have to figure it out here and there. And every content area is covered. You don't have to enroll in the school, but you're able to access the teachers and access the curriculum. Moby Max is a K-8 resource that effectively increases learning gaps, and parents can sign up for that for free. You're going to go into the create a login. You're going to add your kids through that, and you create it as a parent, and you can have your kids work on that, but always review things before you give them to your child. There is a parent support Facebook group that has mentors available to those of you that still feel like you need more support. They have mentors available. It's support for online learning, and you can sign up to that parent support Facebook group, and you have people that will help you there every day. And so here's the flyer for Fortune Distance Learning, and you can check that out. You can also go, like I said, to Moby Max for the increasing of the learning gaps and the parent support Facebook group. I have added here some of the unhelpful thinking styles, cognitive distortion. You can look at that and see how they're affecting your day. And then you can challenge those cognitive distortions and be able to mood regulate. And so now I will close the slide sharing, and I will allow for questions. Okay, can you guys hear me? And is the quality better? Can everyone hear me?
So far, so good.
Okay, so I have a question here. I just had to stop the screen sharing. How involved should parents be during the actual time children are involved in distance learning with their teachers? I've had a range of answers for that, and it's based on what the teachers are providing. There are a lot of parents that have still not been provided with any protocols or any materials. I have parents that are still trying to get access to technology. I have parents that are still trying to figure out when they will be contacted by their school teacher, by their district. And so that's an answer that you will have to basically evaluate based on whatever the teacher has offered to you. If the teacher has offered you weekly check-ins, then I think that you should utilize that as an opportunity to go ahead and do those weekly check-ins. But if you haven't been offered with anything and you're still trying to reach out, then it's, something that you're going to have to create the education and the space for it in your own home. So I hope that answers that. That is something that you can talk to and see. For the most part, if children are not having access to work, or access to curriculum or access to technology, we're not going to take this as an opportunity to talk about charter versus traditional district or homeschool, because I don't believe that that's an appropriate conversation that should be had. If people are allowing for children to enroll in for free, not even enroll in their school, and being able to access curriculum, access teachers, then we want our kids to thrive. We do not want our kids to be stuck at a deficit, waiting for a teacher or waiting for technology or waiting for anything. So I believe that as an organization, the organization can find out why there is no access to technology, why teachers don't have hours, but in the meantime, parents can make the decision that's best for their child. Is there any more questions? Okay, well, seeing that there are no more questions, if someone has a question or a thought after this, we end here this session, then you're more than welcome to reach out to the NAACP. I will get those questions and whatever, also you can email me at christinalaster@live.com. I'm always willing to help navigate through things and offer what assistance and support that I am able to give you as a parent so that you can help your child thrive. Thank you for joining. I hope that you all have a safe, healthy, happy weekend, and that your children are doing well. I'm typing in my email address right here, that your children are doing well and that you stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.